Welcome to Stories of Anora. Thank you for listening. Let's begin today's story. Here, just sign the damn thing already. Then I can finally be free. Grayson shoved the divorce papers across the dining room table, his voice thick with irritation. Beside him, his mistress Chloe stood with a triumphant smile. Her swollen belly a testament to their affair as she looked down on me. "You're absolutely sure about this?" he asked quietly. My heart was already a frozen block of ice. He felt nothing for the man in front of me. "Of course I'm sure," he scoffed. "I'm going to be happy with Chloe and our new baby. Do you think I can stand being with a dull, boring woman like you forever?" Grayson's mother, Eleanor, nodded emphatically. "That's right. My Grayson deserves a younger, more beautiful wife. A useless wife like you who can't even give me a grandson should just get out. Don't you dare show your face in this family again." Eleanor's gaze was frigid, as if I had never existed in the first place. He looked down at the divorce papers. Grayson's and Chloe's signatures were already there along with Eleanor's as the witness. All that was left was my own. "All right," I said. I took the pen and without a moment's hesitation, signed my name. Then I gently squeezed the hand of my daughter, Lily, who was anxiously clutching my sleeve. "Good, it's done," Grayson crowed, snatching the papers from me with a victorious laugh. "Now pack your things and get out." "My bags are already packed," I said, standing up. "Come on, Lily." He took my daughter's hand and walked toward the front door without a single glance back. But at that moment, the three of them had no idea. They didn't know that just 3 minutes after signing those papers, I would be taking Lily on a flight far away from America to London. And they certainly didn't know that the new life they were so eagerly anticipating would be the very trigger that would send their own lives spiraling into the abyss. The raindrops stray across the taxi window, blurring the neon city lights. Lily, exhausted, was asleep on my lap. As we headed toward the airport, I reflected on my life. It had been 15 years since I married that man, Grayson. I had literally dedicated everything to being his support system. Grayson was a seemingly diligent employee at a mid-tier trading corporation. "When we get married, I want you to stay home and support me," he had said. So, I gave up my career and chose the path of a stay-at-home mother. My mother-in-law, Eleanor, had sneered at my decision. "Well, I suppose a woman with no real skills like you is only good for housework anyway. You'll be living off my son's hard-earned money, so you'd better serve him well." Those were her welcoming words to me at our wedding. Every day since had been an exercise in patience. Grayson was charming to outsiders, but at home he was a complete tyrant. "Is dinner ready yet?" "The shower's not hot enough." "You didn't iron this shirt right." It would yell at the slightest inconvenience. Still, I tried to find hope in the birth of our daughter, Lily. "You have to be strong for this child," I told myself, enduring his unreasonable demands and Eleanor's constant nagging. But everything changed about 6 months ago. Grayson started coming home late and his weekends were filled with golf trips. The scent of a different perfume, the smudge of lipstick on his collar, they were all classic signs of an affair. Then one night, the final blow came. His smartphone buzzed on the nightstand. I saw a notification from a Chloe complete with a heart emoji. "Miss you tonight. The baby wants to see his daddy, though." The moment I read that message, I felt the ground crumble beneath me. Not only was Grayson cheating, but the other woman was pregnant. With trembling hands, I put the phone down and confronted him. "Eso es no remorse." "Ah, so you found out?" "Well, this is a good time to tell you. I'm marrying Chloe, so we're getting a divorce." He said it with a smirk, as if he were discussing the weather. What are you talking about? We're a married couple. We have Lily. So what? Chloe is pregnant with my child. There is no point in being with someone like you, who I don't even see as a woman anymore. His words completely negated my 15 years of devotion. Even more devastating was Eleanor's reaction when I begged for her help. She gave me a cold smile and said, "Oh, Grayson is getting a new wife. How wonderful. A young, cute bride is much better than an incompetent one like you, and it might be a boy this time. I can't wait to see my grandson." Eleanor had always been disappointed that I had given birth to a girl. For her, the mistress's pregnancy was the perfect excuse to cast me aside. From that day on, life became even harder for me and Lily. Grayson cut our living expenses and began shamelessly bringing Chloe to our home. Every time I saw him lovingly caress Chloe's stomach in front of Lily, my heart shattered into a million pieces. "Mommy, don't cry." Lily's small hand would wipe away my tears. He made a decision. If I stayed, Lily would be miserable, though. He had to escape this hell and start a new life. He began my preparations in secret, ensuring Grayson and his family would never find out. The taxi arrived at the airport's departure gate. The rain had stopped, and a few stars were visible in the sky. "We're right here, Lily. Let's go." He gently woke her and pulling our large suitcase, we headed for the gate. A new life was about to begin for us, and a new hell was about to begin for them. He glanced back one last time at the distant city lights. He would never return to this place. Just then, my smartphone vibrated. An unknown number was calling. Who could it be at this hour? With a sense of foreboding, I answered the call. "Hello." The voice on the other end was unexpected. It was the strained voice of my father-in-law. "Arthur, I am so sorry." Arthur's voice was strained. It had been months since I'd last heard it. Unlike Eleanor, Arthur was a quiet man who rarely interfered in family matters. But when Grayson had demanded a divorce and planned to kick me out, he had merely watched in silence. What is it?" "It's so late. Grayson told me you left. Said you left the divorce papers." There was a blaming tone in his voice. "Yes. Grayson said he's going to marry Chloe and she's pregnant, isn't she?" A heavy sigh came from the other end. "Yes, about that." "Ada, are you really sure this is for the best?" "What do you mean for the best?" "Man, what about Lily? Do you really think you can raise her on your own? Grayson is refusing to pay a single cent of alimony or child support." He clenched my jaw. Grayson knew I was a stay-at-home mom with no savings and was trying to crush me financially. "Ella be fine. I have my own plans and I will raise Lily to be a wonderful person." "It's alright," through my bravado. "Don't be so stubborn. What can you possibly do? If you go back, Gray, and beg Grayson for forgiveness, maybe he'll break up with Chloe. For the child's sake, don't you think that's the wise thing to do?" "Arthur, I have no intention of begging Grayson for anything." He was stroking Chloe's stomach in front of Lily. "I don't want a man like that to be Lily's father." "Don't be so proud," Arthur suddenly shouted. A rare show of emotion from the Tastern man. "A woman with no skills like you can't possibly raise a child alone. Even Eleanor said you have no charm. That's why Grayson is leaving you. Now listen, you come back home by tomorrow. Ella talked to Grayson. We'll pay off Chloe and send her away. You just need to shut up and remain Grayson's wife." His words sounded like a lifeline. But they were only meant to protect Grayson's reputation and the family's public image. "Arthur, it's too late. I've already made my decision. ¿Decisión? What decision? I will never have anything to do with Grayson again. And this is goodbye to you and your family as well. He said nothing more and ended the call, my hand trembling as I clutched the phone. Mommy, who was that? Lily, who had woken up, looked at me with a worried expression. It was nothing, sweetie. We'll be on the plane soon. A plane? Where are we going? To a faraway place, I said, stroking her hair with a smile. A happy place just for you and me. He was filled with anxiety. He had no idea what the future held. But there was no turning back. Lily, I'm so sorry we had to leave, Daddy. He whispered, a moment of weakness escaping me. But Lily just looked at me and shook her little head. You don't need Daddy. What? Daddy was always mad at Mommy and Grandma was always mean to Mommy. I don't want to see you cry anymore, Mommy. Her words were a revelation. This little child had been more aware of the toxic atmosphere in our home than I ever imagined. Oh, Lily. He hugged her tightly. He would do anything to protect this child. He would face any hardship. Boarding for the flight to London will now commence. The announcement echoed through the airport. Come on, Lily. Let's go. He stood up and held her hand firmly. My steps toward the boarding gate were much stronger than before. As our plane took off from American soil, Grayson, Chloe, and Eleanor were probably celebrating the birth of their new life, completely certain of their glorious future. They had no idea of the hell that awaited them in a few short months. And when they discovered that I was not just a useless stay-at-home mom, I wondered what their faces would look like. The city lights below grew smaller and smaller, eventually disappearing beneath the clouds. Goodbye, my past. Goodbye, Grayson. He took a deep breath and thought about my new life in London. But the question lingered in the back of my mind. Why did Chloe look so unnaturally triumphant in that pregnancy? Was it really Grayson's child? He stared at my reflection in the dark window. Deep within my eyes, the cold flame of revenge was quietly beginning to burn. After the call with Arthur, I led Lily to a bench in the departure lounge. Outside the window, the runway was shrouded in darkness. Soon we would be on one of those planes, leaving this all behind. But Arthur's words still stung. A woman with no skills like you can't possibly raise a child alone. The phrase echoed in my ears. I became a housewife because Grayson wanted me to. But now that it was inconvenient for them, I was looked down upon as unskilled and dependent. I was just a convenient housekeeper, a tool to maintain their public image. Mommy. Lily's voice broke through my thoughts, her little face etched with worry. Oh, sorry, sweetie. Are you hungry? He asked, trying to sound cheerful. She nodded. Then, let's go get something from that shop over there. What would you like? We walked to a small convenience store, and Lily's face lit up as she looked at the snacks. Watching her innocent joy brought a small measure of peace to my heart. He had to be strong for her. This one, Lily chose a cute pink box of chocolates. Okay, let's go pay for it. As I reached for my wallet, a voice called out from behind me. Well, if it isn't Lily, I turned to see a familiar face. Grayson's sister, my sister-in-law, Bill, dressed in a designer coat and pulling an expensive-looking suitcase. She always treated me with the same condescending attitude as Grayson and Eleanor. Brielle, what are you doing here? He asked, surprised. Bill laughed dismissively. A trip to Hawaii with friends, of course. What a coincidence, though. Where are you two going at this time of night? And with such a big suitcase, she added, her eyes landing on my luggage. Just a little far away. Too far away, you say? Bill looked from me to Lily with an amused expression. Oh, that's right. My brother told me you just left the divorce papers and ran off. Mom was furious. Said you were a completely inconsiderate wife for leaving without any discussion. She spoke loudly, oblivious to the people around us. The store clerk and other travelers were glancing our way. I felt my face burn with shame, but I forced myself to remain calm. Inconsiderati. I didn't just leave. Grayson told me he was marrying Chloe. Well, if you want to put it that way, it just means my brother chose Chloe over you. You can't blame him. Is a man. Of course, he'd prefer someone young and pretty. Besides, Chloe's pregnant. Mom is so thrilled we'll finally have a proper heir. Bella's words were an exact echo of her mother's. To them, Chloe's pregnancy was a free pass. A legitimate reason to get rid of me. Poor Lily, Belle said, looking down at my daughter with cruel pity. You'll be abandoned by your father because your mother is like this. Belle, don't you dare say things like that in front of Lily. I snapped, my voice rising. I didn't care if she insulted me, but I would not let her hurt my daughter. What? It's the truth. A stay-at-home mom with no skills trying to raise a child alone. It's impossible. Joy be broke in a month and come crying back to my brother, begging for money. She laughed mockingly and adjusted her designer handbag. Good luck with that. We'll be perfectly happy with Chloe and the new baby. See you around. With a flick of her hair, she sauntered off. My hands trembled with rage as I watched her go. Mommy. Lily squeezed my hand tightly. Her warmth was the only thing that could melt the ice in my heart. It's okay, sweetie. We are going to be happy, just the two of us. I smiled at her and paid for the chocolates. The boarding announcement echoed through the terminal again. It was finally time to leave. As we walked to the gate, Belle's words replayed in my mind. Joy be broke in a month and come crying back to my brother. That family was so certain that I was a helpless, powerless woman. And it was true. In their eyes, I was just a housewife who could only do chores. But they were making a huge mistake. They didn't know that for the past 15 years, I hadn't just been quietly doing housework. I touched the smartphone in my coat pocket. It held the trump card I had prepared for this very day. Grayson, Eleanor, Belle, and Chloe. They all believed they were the winners right now. But the happy future they envisioned wouldn't last long. As I climbed the steps to the plane, I looked up at the dark sky. On this day of my departure from America, my heart was filled not with sadness, but with a quiet, burning resolve. I couldn't wait to see how their faces would twist in agony on the day they learned the truth. But then a thought crossed my mind. If Chloe's pregnancy was what I suspected it was, things might unfold in a way that was far more terrifying than I could have ever imagined. The plane door closed and the moment of takeoff was near. I fastened my seat belt and stared out the window. As the plane began to move, my heart accelerated toward a new future. But whether that future held light or darkness, no one yet knew. After a flight of over 12 hours, we landed at London's Heathrow Airport. The local time was early evening. A thick, dreary canopy of clouds covered the sky, and a cold, misty rain, so typical of London, was falling. Mommy, I'm cold. Lily, exhausted from the long journey, tugged weakly at my coat. I know, sweetie. We'll be at a warm hotel soon. I hugged her close and hurried to a taxi. Contrary to the anticipation I felt for my new life, the gray cityscape outside the window seemed to amplify my anxiety. We arrived at the hotel I had booked in central London. As I was checking in at the front desk, the elderly man behind the counter looked at me with a troubled expression. "I'm sorry, madam, but this credit card has been declined." "What? That can't be right. Could you please try it again?" eBay tried several times. "It appears to be locked. Do you have another card?" He frantically pulled out another card from my wallet, but the result was the same. Justin. Casi. I tried to withdraw cash from an ATM in the lobby using the debit card I'd brought from the US, but that was also rejected. He felt the blood drain from my face. He quickly connected my phone to the hotel's free Wi-Fi, and a flood of dozens of notifications from a messaging app exploded on my screen. They were all from my ex-husband, Grayson, and my ex-mother-in-law, Eleanor. A text from Grayson read, "Hey, Belle told me you took Lily and fled the country. You foolish woman. eBay had all the family credit cards in your name, Kenlet. He also moved all the money from our joint account to my personal one. Did you really think a useless housewife could run away overseas on my money? These will teach a clueless woman like you a lesson." Next was a voicemail from Eleanor. When I played it, her shrill voice echoed in the quiet corner of the lobby. "What an utterly shameless wife you are, trying to run off with the money Grayson earned. You're no better than a thief. I hope you starve to death miserably in some foreign land. And don't you dare come crying to my son when you're broke." He stared at the screen, speechless. While I was on the plane, they had severed every single one of my financial lifelines. Even the small emergency fund I had in my own name had been locked. Grayson must have somehow changed the password to block me. "Madam, I'm very sorry, but if you cannot provide a deposit, we cannot give you a room." The clerk's professional, detached voice mercilessly brought me back to reality. We were forced out of the comfortable lobby and back onto the cold, rainy streets of London. Stranded in a foreign country with no one to turn to, all I had was a few hundred in cash. My hand holding the suitcase trembled, and a chill of fear crept up from my feet, making my teeth chatter. "Mommy, I'm hungry." "And my hands are cold," Lily said, looking up at me with tears in her eyes. Her little face was pale, and she was shivering uncontrollably. "A woman with no skills like you can't possibly raise a child alone." Arthur's scolding voice and Belle's mocking face flashed through my mind. Was Grayson right? Was he naive? At 15 years of being a housewife turned me into a clueless, foolish woman? At this rate, I wouldn't just be dooming myself. He would be dragging Lily down with me. An overwhelming sense of despair crushed my chest, and I was about to break down and cry, hugging Lily in the middle of the rain. No, this was no time for crying. He still had it, the trump card hidden in my coat pocket. But how could I use it in this situation? Even if I tried to make a call, considering the time difference, there was no guarantee the person in the US would even answer. The rain grew heavier and the London streets sank into a cold darkness. I could feel Lily's body temperature dropping. This was our limit. He had to ask someone for help. Just then, a black luxury car glided to a stop in front of us, splashing through a puddle. It wasn't a classic London black cab, but a gleaming polished black sedan. The rear door opened silently, and a figure holding a black umbrella stepped out. The sound of leather shoes approached us through the puddles. "What are you doing out here in a place like this?" The cold rain that had been beating down on my head was suddenly blocked. He slowly lifted my face and my eyes met with a person I never ever expected to see here. "Joe. What are you doing here?" The person gently draped a high-end cashmere coat over a shivering Lily and then turned to me with a calm smile. "eBay come to pick you up. Please come. Your daughter will catch a cold. plunged into the depths of despair on a foreign night. Who was this person who had appeared before me? And from here, the gears of my epic counterattack against Grayson and his family would finally begin to turn. Ibe come to pick you up. Please come. Your daughter will catch a cold. In the freezing rain, the man who had draped his luxurious cashmere coat over Lily held his umbrella over me and smiled gently. Mr. Stanley, what are you doing here? He stared at him as if I were seeing a ghost. Standing there was Richard Stanley, the head of the American branch of a British investment fund, which happened to be the biggest client of the trading corporation where Grayson worked. His salt and pepper hair, well-tailored suit, and intelligent, calm demeanor were exactly as I remembered from the few times we had met in the U.S. But why was he here on a street in London? I'm not surprised you're shocked. We can talk in the car, please, Mr. Stanley said in fluent English, opening the rear door for me. Bewildered, I held the shivering Lily and stumbled into the warm interior of the car. Mr. Stanley quickly got in and gave the driver an instruction. The car pulled away smoothly. Madame Anora, I must apologize for this unconventional welcome, he began. I heard your flight was delayed and was heading to the airport, but when I checked with the hotel, they said you had already left. But how did you know which hotel I was at? And why are you here, Mr. Stanley? He asked, my mind still reeling. I smiled apologetically. He received very strong instructions from him to ensure your safety. It was the one who arranged the hotel. However, I never imagined that man would go so far as to cancel your credit cards. He sincerely apologized that our response was delayed and caused you such distress. He caught my breath. The smartphone in my coat pocket, the contact information for a certain person stored inside. Your employer, Mr. Stanley said, confirming my thoughts, and my longtime business partner, Mr. Vance. At the mention of his name, I lowered my eyes. Not Grayson, not Eleanor, not Belle. No one knew my secret. The reason I was not just a housewife with no skills. For 15 years, I hadn't just been living a life confined to housework and childcare. Before my marriage, I worked as an analyst at a prestigious financial institution. Fluent in several languages, I specialized in overseas market research and investment analysis. When I married Grayson, I officially resigned to become a housewife at his strong insistence that a woman's place was in the home. However, my former boss, who had highly valued my talent, was reluctant to see me leave the industry entirely. When he left to start his own consulting firm, he hired me to continue working for him in secret as a ghost analyst. All my work was done from home. During the day while Grayson was at work or late at night after the family was asleep, I would sit at my computer translating foreign economic news, analyzing market data, and writing reports. My compensation was wired to a personal offshore account that Grayson knew nothing about. A woman with no skills. Whose money do you think you're living on? Every time Grayson or Eleanor hurled those words at me, I would laugh inwardly. The income one generated far exceeded Grayson's annual salary. He contacted me, Mr. Stanley said, tapping on his tablet. It told me you had finally left that wretched house. You made the right decision. I always said that keeping a brilliant mind like yours locked away in such a small house was a great loss for the global economy. Mr. Stanley, from now on, you will be working as a senior analyst at our London headquarters. We expect you to fully utilize your talents. Your desk is already prepared. He let out a deep breath. My frozen body slowly began to thaw from the warmth of the car and the overwhelming sense of relief. Lily, wrapped in Mr. Stanley's coat, had fallen back into a peaceful sleep. Thank you, but I never imagined you would come to pick me up yourself, Mr. Stanley. We couldn't risk losing an asset as valuable as you, he said. And besides, he paused and showed me the screen of his tablet. Displayed were the name of the trading corporation Grayson worked for and its recent transaction data. That is another task from him. A thorough investigation of your ex-husband, Grayson Miller. And the projects he is managing. Grayson's? Indeed. For some time now, we've noticed suspicious financial flows related to an investment deal he is handling. We were already conducting our own investigation. It seems your ex-husband is involved in some very risky business. I stared at the tablet screen, a chill running down my spine. Grayson was a man driven by vanity and pride. He knew he was frustrated that his career was lagging behind his peers. He had vaguely wondered where he was getting the money to take a young mistress like Chloe to fancy restaurants and buy her designer goods. Mr. Stanley Grayson is using company funds. We cannot say for certain, but we strongly suspect embezzlement, and the methods are quite malicious. If this comes to light, he won't just be fired. He'll be arrested and face criminal charges. Arrested. The word hung heavily in the air. And then Mr. Stanley dropped another bombshell. And one more thing, the woman he intends to marry, Chloe, we had her investigated as well. You investigated, Chloe? Yes. A person who pushed you to such an extreme deserved a thorough background check. And we found something very interesting. Mr. Stanley gave a cold smile. That woman's pregnancy, do you really think it's your ex-husband's child? He gasped. The uneasy feeling I had on the plane. Chloe's unnaturally triumphant attitude. What do you mean? It appears she has been involved with multiple men besides your ex-husband. One of them is a senior executive at his company. A senior executive? She intentionally chose your husband as the father. Probably because he was the easiest to deceive. Her plan is to squeeze him for a massive settlement, or rather all the assets she thinks he's taking from you. He felt dizzy. Grayson had been deceived by a woman pregnant with another man's child, destroyed our family, cancelled my credit cards, and was even stealing from his own company. What a pathetic, foolish man. I made a proposal to your employer, Mr. Stanley said, closing his tablet and looking at me directly. We will provide our full backing for the sanctions against Grayson Miller. It continued, Madame Anora. You have endured unfair treatment and silently served them for too long. You don't have to tolerate it anymore. We will provide you with perfect support for your counterattack. The car stopped in front of a beautiful brick townhouse in one of London's affluent residential areas. These will be your home from now on for you and your daughter. Security is top-notch and everything you need for daily life has been arranged. Please get some rest. As the driver opened the door and held an umbrella for me, I carried Lily out of the car. The rain had completely stopped and the moon was visible through a break in the clouds. Grayson, Eleanor, Belle, and Chloe. Right now, they were probably toasting their victory, convinced they had driven me out. They were probably hoping I was starving and miserable in a foreign land. But they were making a huge mistake. They didn't know that I possessed the most powerful weapons and allies. Now, let's begin preparing the counterattack, I murmured in a quiet, firm voice. My face, illuminated by the moonlight, was no longer crying. While I was greeting a quiet dawn in London, my ex-husband's family in America was reveling in their victory. Ah, was that gloomy woman finally gone? This house feels so much brighter, Eleanor chirped, slicing a gourmet melon in the kitchen. This was the house I had polished and maintained every day for 15 years. But now, lounging on the living room sofa was Chloe dressed in a flashy maternity dress. It's true, Eleanor was always so depressing. Just being around her was suffocating. Chloe cooed in a sickly sweet voice. Grayson nodded in satisfaction. Exactly. No skills yet so full of pride. She's probably stranded on the streets of London right now. He cancelled all her cards and cleaned up the joint account. Bet. She come crying to me on the phone. Not that I'll help her. Grayson laughed crudely, pulling Chloe closer. A luxury watch I had never seen before, worth tens of thousands of dollars, glinted on his wrist. Grayson. Honey, after the baby is born, I want to move into a bigger place, like a penthouse apartment. You got it, Bobby. My promotion is just around the corner, and I've got plenty of money. His face was full of confidence, showing no hint that he was embezzling from his own company. They had no idea a giant pitfall was opening right beneath their feet. The next day, Grayson and Eleanor took Chloe to a renowned, high-end obstetrics clinic in Chicago's Gold Coast. Well, if you're going to give birth to the family heir, it has to be at a prestigious hospital like this, Eleanor said, looking down her nose at the other people in the waiting room. Grayson, trying to act the part of a successful man, flipped through a magazine. Chloe Miller, the doctor will see you now. A nurse called them, and the three of them entered the examination room together. Hello, how are you feeling today? Let's take a look at the baby with an ultrasound, a veteran doctor said with a gentle smile, helping Chloe onto the examination bed. Hill was applied to her belly and a black and white image appeared on the monitor. Look, Eleanor Grayson. Is moving. Chloe pointed at the screen full of pride. Wow, so that's my son. Oh, what a healthy little boy. It looks just like Grayson, Grayson and Eleanor exclaimed. It was at that moment that the doctor, who had been staring intently at the monitor, frowned. Jamie. He tilted his head, comparing the image on the screen with the information in her digital chart. The atmosphere in the room grew tense. Doctor, is something wrong? Grayson asked anxiously. The doctor replied in a perplexed tone. No, the baby is developing very well. It's just Miss Chloe. You are currently at 20 weeks gestation, meaning you're entering your 5th month. The size of the fetus confirms this. Grayson and Eleanor looked at each other. Doctor, are you sure? There must be a mistake. Grayson and Chloe only started dating 3 months ago. She should be 3 months pregnant, Eleanor interjected. The doctor shook his head firmly. No, based on the ultrasound findings, it's definitely 5 months. Furthermore, he added, looking at the past records in her chart, Miss Chloe, you visited this clinic once before, 2 months ago at that time. You were accompanied by a much older, heavy-set gentleman. The intake form states that he was your husband. A silent crack ran through the room. What? The color drained from Grayson's face. Eleanor stood there, mouth agape. Chloe, what is the meaning of this? 5 months. And who is this older man? Eleanor's voice trembled. On the bed, Chloe's face had gone deathly pale, her lips trembling. No, that's not right. The doctor's mistaken. Maybe the machine is broken. She shrieked in a panic. At that exact moment, Grayson's phone rang, its shrill tone piercing the silence. The screen showed a call from his boss, the head of the sales department. Jace, Miller speaking. Confused, Grayson answered the phone, only to have his boss's furious roar blast into his ear. Miller, get your ass back to the office right now. The audit department is tearing apart the books for all of your past projects. What the hell is going on? Did the audit department? The phone slipped from his hand, clattering onto the hard floor. A fake pregnancy. The discovery of embezzlement. The flimsy castle Grayson had built for himself was now about to come crashing down with a deafening roar. The next morning, the London sky was a clear, brilliant blue, a stark contrast to the previous night's cold rain. In the spacious living room with its crackling fireplace, I gently placed another blanket over Lily, who was still asleep on the plush sofa. "I'll be back soon," I whispered, then stepped into the car. Mr. Stanley had sent for me. We drove to a glass-encased skyscraper in the heart of the City of London, the world's financial center. Behind the heavy mahogany door on the top floor, an older gentleman was waiting at a large desk. "Thank you for coming, Ada. I'm sorry to trouble you after such a long journey. Mr. Vance, it's been a long time." He was Alistair Vance, the man who had employed me as a ghost analyst for 15 years, the head of a massive investment fund, and most importantly, the majority shareholder in the trading corporation where Grayson worked. It was a man of immense power. "No, here I should call you by your proper title, the top analyst our firm is so proud of, Madame mia," Mr. Vance said with a warm smile. "Your ex-husband called you a woman with no skills. He believed to treat one of the world's finest minds like a housekeeper. What a foolish man. Mr. Vance, thank you so much for protecting my secret all these years and for your generous support," I said, bowing my head deeply. Vance's expression turned serious as he slid a tablet across the desk toward me. "The initial report you sent me before you left the country, the one detailing your suspicions about your ex-husband's misconduct, was flawless." He immediately applied direct pressure to the audit department in the US and initiated a top-secret investigation. "But was there a problem?" "Yes, it's clear that Grayson Miller has been embezzling company funds. But the money, a staggering sum of several $1 million, has been routed through a complex network of offshore shell companies, and we can't trace its final destination. The audit team is stumped." Vance looked me straight in the eye. "Ada, I need you to use your expertise to unravel this financial maze. I want you to deliver the final blow that brings him down." He silently took the tablet. The screen was filled with a dizzying array of numbers and complex transaction records. Though the average person, it would look like gibberish, but to my eyes, the hidden pattern was crystal clear. My fingers began to fly across the keyboard. This was different from the days of hiding in a corner of my house to work on my laptop. Here with no one to hide from. My true talent was reawakening. A few minutes later, I said quietly, "Found it." Mr. Stanley and Mr. Vance leaned in. These multiple shell companies appear unrelated at first glance, but they all ultimately funnel into a single private account in the Bahamas. "And the name of the director of the company managing that account," I pointed to the screen. "Oh my God," Mr. Stanley whispered. "All this name?" Vance's eyes widened in shock. "Yes," I confirmed, my voice cold. "It's the same name Mr. Stanley uncovered yesterday in his background check on Chloe, the older man who accompanied her to the obstetrics clinic, her real patron." I laid out the cold, hard facts. Grayson was embezzling company funds and channeling them into this man's company under the guise of an investment. Chloe and this man were in on it together from the start. They targeted Grayson to defraud him. So, Grayson was tricked into believing he was the father of his mistress's child. All while being used as a pawn to funnel away millions of his company's money. A brilliant connection of the dots, Vance sighed in admiration. Mr. Stanley applauded quietly. "Magnificent. You truly are a genius. All right, let's send this perfect report to the audit department in the US immediately." Meanwhile, back in a bleak conference room at the American Trading Corporation, Grayson was surrounded by several auditors, sweat beading on his forehead. "Give me a break. There is no way I would embezzle money. I'm the rising star of this company. This is all a mistake." Grayson slammed his fist on the table, desperately trying to talk his way out of it. "I'm an elite. He got rid of that gloomy wife and won a beautiful young woman. I'm one of the chosen ones. This can't be happening. It was my subordinate mistake. He didn't know anything. As Grayson pathetically tried to shift the blame, the head of the audit department just stared at him with a cold gaze. Just then, a notification pinged on the auditor's computer. He opened the email and the look in his eyes changed instantly. Miller, what is it? He told you I'm innocent. We just received a file from our majority shareholder in London. It contains complete proof of your misconduct. What? The auditor slammed a piece of paper down in front of Grayson. It was a perfectly illustrated diagram showing the flow of funds to the shell companies and the cruel truth that all of it had ended up with Chloe's patron. It seems you were completely duped by the woman you were lavishing money on. You embezzled millions of dollars from the company and handed it all to a con artist. There is no talking your way out of this now. No, that's impossible. Chloe loves me. Who? Who created this garbage report? Grayson screamed, his eyes bloodshot. The head auditor scoffed. Garbage? This is a flawless report prepared by a world-class top analyst employed by our majority shareholder. But I have to admit, I was surprised by the analyst's name. The auditor pointed to the author's name at the bottom of the report. It's the same name as your ex-wife. Grayson's eyes locked onto the text. O será avance. Ara. No, it can't be. A shock as if he'd been hit over the head with a sledgehammer coursed through him. A desperate moan escaped Grayson's lips. The woman he had looked down on, trampled upon, and thrown away was now the one holding the Reaper scythe to his neck. Grayson's true hell was just beginning. No, Arara. That clumsy, useless, a top analyst. It's impossible. Grayson's desperate screams echoed through the conference room. The report the auditor had slammed in front of him detailed the multi-million-dollar embezzlement scheme he thought he had perfectly concealed, laid out so clearly that even a novice could understand it. The precision and accuracy were undeniably the work of a professional. The woman you dismissed as having no skills, the head auditor said, his voice dripping with ice. She's been a top-tier ghost analyst, secretly employed for the past 15 years by our majority shareholder, the London Investment Fund. And this entire investigation was conducted under the direct orders of the shareholder, by her. The auditor's cold words pierced Grayson's heart. No, that can't be. She was just a housewife living off my money. And that just a housewife is now the most critical asset to the majority shareholder who controls the fate of this entire company. Miller, you really stepped on a landmine, didn't you? The auditor shook his head in utter disbelief. We have all the evidence of your embezzlement. We've already contacted the police. There is no escape. What, please? It's not my fault. He was tricked by that woman, by Chloe. I'm the victim here. Grayson threw himself to the floor, groveling and collapsing to his knees on the cold tile. But not a single auditor showed him a shred of sympathy. A victim? After embezzling millions from the company? Save your excuses for the police. At the same time, in the upscale obstetrics clinic, another version of hell was unfolding. I'm telling you, you're mistaken. I'm 3 months pregnant. 5 months is impossible. Chloe shrieked from the examination bed, her face ashen as she desperately tried to maintain her lie. But the ultrasound images clearly show. The bewildered doctor began. But Eleanor was already trembling with rage. Chloe, what is going on? 5 months? Does that mean you were pregnant before you even started dating my son? And who was that older man who came with you those months ago? Eleanor's shrill voice filled the room. The usually prim and proper woman was now a picture of fury. Eleanor, that's not true. Please believe me. This is Grayson's baby. Don't you lie to me. Doctors don't lie. You got pregnant by another man and tried to trick my son, didn't you? Eleanor lunged at Chloe, ready to tear her hair out. Stop it. You're hurting me. Ella tell Grayson. He loves me and this baby. And where's your precious Grayson now? He got called away by some audit department and isn't even answering his phone. Just then, the door to the examination room burst open. It was Grayson's sister, Belle, panting for breath. Ma'am, it's terrible. Belle, weren't you supposed to be in Hawaii? This is no time for a vacation. Dad just called. Grayson's been arrested by the police for embezzling company money. Arrested? Eleanor and Chloe's voices overlapped perfectly. He apparently stole millions and funneled it to some shell company. And the money? Belle turned a venomous glare on Chloe. It all ended up in the bank account of your patron, Chloe. Eleanor stared blankly, unable to process the information. It means this woman was a con artist from the start, only after the company's money. And the baby in her stomach is probably that patron's child. At Belle's words, the last bit of color drained from Chloe's face. The plan had been perfect. Grayson, with his fragile pride, vanity, and selfishness, had been the perfect mark. Get him to kick out his wife, marry her, and bleed his company dry. Everything was supposed to go smoothly. How? How could they find out? Chloe stammered, her lips trembling. How? Don't be stupid. Belle shoved her smartphone in front of Eleanor and Chloe. The person who exposed all of this was the top analyst for my brother's company's majority shareholder. On the screen was a breaking financial news headline. Massive investment fund appoints new senior analyst. Uncovers major embezzlement case in top secret investigation. Below the headline was a photo of a beautiful woman standing confidently against the backdrop of the London skyline. This can't be real. Eleanor collapsed to her knees. The useless, dull, incompetent wife was a top analyst at a global firm. The woman in the photo was without a doubt the woman they had thrown out of their house. But this wasn't the in a worn-out apron. This was a sophisticated woman in a tailored suit exuding intelligence and grace. Ada, she took all our money. Chloe stared at the phone, her face contorted in despair. They finally understood. The pebble they had been trampling underfoot was actually a bomb powerful enough to obliterate them. And the person who had pressed the detonation button was none other than themselves. Chloe fled the clinic, running desperately through the pouring rain, her heels clicking on the pavement, heedless of the mud. How could this happen? They weren't supposed to find out. She repeatedly tried calling her patron Vincent Bini Russo, but the calls went straight to voicemail. Russo was a career con artist who operated multiple shell companies. Chloe had approached Grayson under his orders, faking the pregnancy to execute their plan to embezzle from the trading corporation. It was supposed to be a flawless plan. Once that gloomy wife was out of the picture, millions of dollars would be theirs. Chloe finally reached Russo's luxury high-rise apartment. With a trembling hand, she used her key and stumbled inside only to find an unbelievable scene. Damn it! Why? Why are all my offshore accounts frozen? Papers were strewn everywhere. Russo, a heavy-set older man, was staring at his computer screen with bloodshot eyes, furiously pounding the keyboard as if to destroy it. Beanie, help me. Grayson was arrested and shut up, you jinx. A powerful slap from Russo sent Chloe flying to the floor. Ah! Staring down at her, Russo's face was a mask of pure rage. It's all your fault because you couldn't handle that idiot Grayson Miller properly. My entire operation is finished. Some top analyst from a huge British fund exposed every last cent of my illegal transfers. The feds and the IRS are already on their way. All my assets are gone. No, then what? About me? What about the baby? It's your child. Chloe cried, trying to grab onto him. Russo kicked her away as if she were filth. My child, don't make me laugh. He had a vasectomy years ago. You think you can pin some bastard you conceived fooling around on me? Chloe felt as if she'd been struck by lightning. When you told me you were pregnant, I just saw it as the perfect excuse to squeeze money out of Grayson. You were nothing but a collection machine. Now you're useless. Get the hell out, he spat. Russo then grabbed a duffel bag, stuffed it with whatever valuables were left, and fled, leaving a stunned Chloe behind. All that remained was Chloe alone, clutching her stomach on the cold floor, trembling in a despair so profound she couldn't even make a sound. At the same time, in a dim interrogation room at a police station, Grayson sat in handcuffs, staring blankly at the floor. A veteran detective with graying hair sat across from him, flipping through a thick file. Grayson Miller. The millions you embezzled were all traced to the accounts of a con artist named Vincent Russo. The woman you were infatuated with, Chloe, was just his accomplice acting on his orders. The detective's cold words stabbed at Grayson's heart. No, that's a lie. Chloe loves me. She's pregnant with my child. Are you still spouting that nonsense? The detective let out a heavy sigh of exasperation and slapped a document on the table. Chloe was involved with multiple men. We don't even need a DNA test to know it's not your kid. You fell for a woman's lies, betrayed your company, got swindled out of millions, and lost everything. You're nothing but a colossal fool. Fat, pathetic tears rolled down Grayson's cheeks. A had believed he was an elite. A had looked down on a useless woman like, convinced he deserved a younger, more beautiful partner, that he was a chosen one. But the truth was a harsh slap in the face. It was just an easy conceited mark. Detective, what's going to happen to me? Gran larceny? Wire fraud? The total damages are in the millions. You're not going to avoid prison time. And of course, you'll be fired for cause and face a massive lawsuit for damages from your company. Your life is over. Grayson covered his face with his hands and sobbed. The woman he had thrown away like trash was now a world-class analyst enjoying a brilliant career in London. She was a being so far above him, he couldn't even touch her. In contrast, he was a criminal, duped by a con artist who had lost everything and was now sitting in a cold cell. Ah, Grayson's scream of regret echoed in the interrogation room. But the detective, far from showing sympathy, delivered another cold, hard fact. It's too early to be crying, Miller. You have a visitor. Someone with the worst possible news to deliver the final blow to you and your family. The heavy door creaked open. The moment Grayson saw the face of the person standing there, he fell out of his chair in pure terror. The heavy interrogation room door creaked open. The man who appeared before Grayson was his own father, Arthur. But he looked nothing like the dignified man he once was. His hair was a disheveled mess, and his face was ashen, as if he had aged 10 years overnight. Dad, you came. Help me. He was framed. That woman, Chloe, she set me up. Grayson scrambled up, trying to clutch at his father. Arthur slammed a thick brown envelope onto the table with all his might. The sharp sound echoed through the room. Framed. Do you have any idea what you've done? Arthur's voice was a low growl that seemed to come from the depths of his being. Grayson flinched. The company is suing you for $5 million in damages. The exact amount you embezzled because you manipulated me into co-signing those massive financial bonds for your investments. My retirement savings, the house, the land, everything is being seized. No, that can't be. You betrayed your company. You betrayed your family. And to top it off, you handed our entire fortune to some con artist's mistress, all while throwing away a real treasure. Like Arthur's voice was like he was coughing up blood. The news that the wife Grayson had dismissed as useless was a world-class analyst who had exposed them had already reached his ears. I'm sorry. He was a fool. Please hire a lawyer. Do something. It's too late. As of today, you are no longer my son. Don't ever show your face to me again. You can spend the rest of your life in prison, cursing your own stupidity. With that, Arthur turned and left the interrogation room, tears streaming down his face. Left behind, Grayson could only collapse onto the cold floor and weep pathetically. At the same time, an even deeper hell was unfolding at the Miller family's stately home. This is ridiculous. Why do we have to leave? This is my house. Eleanor was screeching at a group of suited court officers at her front door. This is a provisional seizure of assets related to your son's embezzlement case. You must vacate the premises immediately. All furniture and personal effects must be left behind. At the officer's cold, bureaucratic tone, Grayson's sister, Belle, burst into tears. Ma'am, what are we going to do? My credit cards for the Hawaii trip are all declined. They're going to take my designer bags and my jewelry. Be quiet. How am I supposed to know what to do? Just then, a figure stumbled toward them. It was Chloe, soaked from the rain, her expensive maternity dress caked in mud. Having been abandoned by her patron Russo and with nowhere else to go, she had come to the Miller house as a last resort. Eleanor, please help me. He was tricked. He have nothing left. The moment Eleanor saw her face, something inside her snapped. How dare you show your face here, you conniving thieving tramp? With a demonic look on her face, Eleanor lunged at Chloe, grabbing a fistful of her hair. Oh! Stop it. Let go of me, you old hag. Who are you calling an old hag? And I bet that baby isn't even my son's, is it? Because of you, Grayson is a criminal. He gave us back our comfortable life. Belle joined in, throwing Chloe's handbag into a muddy puddle. You should just die in a ditch somewhere. The three women began a wretched, mud-caked brawl in the front yard, a pathetic, ridiculous end for the people who had once looked down on Anora and believed themselves to be the chosen ones. A black car pulled up to the house, silencing their squabble. The company's corporate lawyer stepped out. Eleanor Miller? A asked. Before we proceed with the seizure, there is one more fact I must inform you of. A fact? Eleanor let go of Chloe, panting heavily as she glared at the lawyer. The mortgage on this house, Belle's frequent overseas trips, and your family's massive monthly credit card bills. Were you aware that Mr. Miller's salary alone was nowhere near enough to cover these expenses? What? But the bills were always paid. Grayson has a high salary. Is a rising star. Eleanor's face turned pale. Mr. Miller's salary is average for his position. It could not possibly support your lifestyle. Every month, large sums of money were transferred from an overseas account to cover the deficit. An overseas account? Yes. That transfer was completely cut off this month, which is why your family's finances collapsed overnight. Eleanor and Belle stared at each other. Who would transfer that much money for us? The lawyer closed his file and looked down at them with a gaze as cold as ice. Do you still not understand? It was the person you dismissed as a useless, incompetent housewife. Your daughter-in-law. The moment they heard the fact the lawyer stated, Eleanor's eyes rolled back in her head and she fainted on the spot. Belle collapsed into the muddy puddle, her legs giving out from under her. The person who had secretly supported their lavish lifestyle was the very woman they had thrown away like trash. And at that exact moment, far away in London, Alara had just uncovered the biggest secret of all. She sat in front of her computer, a quiet smile playing on her lips. From the top floor of the high-end London office building with the beautiful historic cityscape stretching out behind her, quietly gazed at her computer monitor. A complex graph showing countless numbers and intricate transaction routes blinked on the screen. Mamma mia, found something interesting. Mr. Stanley asked from behind her, having just brought a cup of fragrant Earl Grey tea. Yes, I was tracing the $5 million that Grayson embezzled and found an incredible bonus, Alice said, taking the cup and smiling with a cool elegance. A bonus? The entire network of hidden offshore accounts belonging to Ploy's patron, that con artist Russo. Not only the money he swindled from Grayson, but tens of millions of dollars he's defrauded from various companies over the years, all consolidated in a heavily fortified offshore account. Mr. Stanley's eyes widened in shock. Tens of millions? You don't mean you managed to break through the security of that encrypted account? Yes, I just completed the hacking and the legal procedures simultaneously. All of Russo's funds have been frozen and will be returned to the victimized companies. Of course, the $5 million for Grayson's company has also been returned in full. My God, you are truly a formidable woman. Mr. Stanley laughed in disbelief and gave her a round of heartfelt applause. At the exact same time, at a small private airfield in a rural part of the U.S., a man was being cast into the depths of despair. No way. Why? Why is the balance zero? Vincent Russo, who had been attempting to flee the country, stared at his smartphone screen with bloodshot eyes, screaming like a madman. His Swiss bank accounts, his Cayman Islands accounts, even his cryptocurrency holdings, the tens of millions in black money he had spent a lifetime accumulating, had vanished in an instant. The screen simply displayed a cold message. Assets frozen by Vance Investment Fund in accordance with international financial law. All because of that incompetent corporate drone, Grayson Miller. His ex-wife stole everything from me. You've got to be kidding me. Just as Russo screamed at the sky, his location was swarmed by a fleet of police cars. The master con artist was unceremoniously pinned to the ground, completely broke as sirens wailed around him. Back at the police station, the veteran detective once again appeared before Grayson, who was slumped in a cold chair. Miller, that $5 million you embezzled, we just got word from the majority shareholders fund. It's been returned in full. Really? Is that true? Grayson looked up. A glimmer of hope in his eyes. So I'm saved, right? There were no actual damages to the company. So, they'll drop the lawsuit, won't they? Are you an idiot? The detective sneered, looking at Grayson as if he were an insect. Just because the money was returned doesn't erase the crime of embezzlement. You're still going to prison. Furthermore, the company is moving forward with a lawsuit for $10 million in punitive damages for severely damaging the company's reputation. $10 million? The blood drained from Grayson's face again. I can't pay that. It's impossible. Ella file for bankruptcy. Ella get the debt discharged. The detective sighed with a hint of pity for the hysterical man. You really don't understand your situation, do you? You should learn a little about the law. A tapped his pen on the file. In the United States, Debts incurred through malicious and illegal acts such as fraud or embezzlement are non-dischargeable in bankruptcy. What? In other words, whether you file for bankruptcy or not, that $10 million debt will never disappear. For the rest of your life, even after you get out of prison, you'll be working to pay it back until the day you die. Grayson's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. His last escape route had been completely sealed off. And what's more, your parents, Arthur and Eleanor, co-signed those fraudulent investment loans for you. They are also jointly liable for the payment. Your family, because of you, has literally fallen into an eternal hell. Grayson's eyes rolled back, and he collapsed onto the floor. He had thrown away the wife he deemed useless, and his greed for money and a mistress had led to this, an inescapable $10 million debt, and the complete ruin of his entire family. Ah! Grayson's death rattle-like scream echoed through the interrogation room. And in London, looked up from her computer and smiled calmly at Mr. Stanley. Mr. Stanley, now for the biggest discovery I made. The biggest? Yes. He just received a direct communication from Mr. Vance. Her eyes were no longer those of the unconfident housewife of the past. They shone with the sharp brilliance of a top analyst who moved world markets. Grayson's former company, due to its repeated scandals and poor performance, was the subject of a hostile takeover. As of today, our fund has acquired a majority of its shares, which means Mr. Stanley held his breath. Ada nodded slowly. Yes, Mr. Vance has appointed me as the new CEO and president of the American branch. The new head of Grayson's company. After a moment of silence, as the weight of her words sank in, a chill ran down Mr. Stanley's spine. So, as of this moment, the creditor for the $10 million debt that Grayson must spend the rest of his life repaying is me. Al calmly swiped the screen of her tablet. A notice for a creditors' meeting, summoning Grayson, Eleanor, and the others was displayed. Now, let's send them their invitations. An invitation to the endless hell party that I will be hosting. The smile that played on Allah's lips was cold and beautiful. In the most prestigious executive conference room of the downtown Chicago Trading Corporation, a place Grayson had once aspired to as a symbol of elite status, he now sat in an unbelievably pathetic state. Arrested for embezzlement and dragged to this creditors' meeting under police supervision, Grayson's arrogant demeanor was gone. He wore a rumpled, stained sweatsuit, his face unshaven, a cloth draped over his hands to hide the cuffs. Next to him sat his father, Arthur, his mother Eleanor, and his sister Belle. All looking ashen-faced and hollow, like ghosts huddled together. Why? Why is this happening to us? Eleanor muttered, no longer dressed in designer clothes, but in a shabby outfit from a discount store. The asset seizure had left them with literally nothing, and they were now struggling to afford their next meal. It's all your fault, you idiot. Belle shrieked hysterically. Because you fell for some con artist, my life is ruined. He can't even afford dinner tonight, let alone a trip to Hawaii. Grayson just stared at the floor, unresponsive. I love you, stop it. This is pathetic, Arthur yelled, but his voice was, and he looked as if he had aged a decade in just a few days. They were all gathered here to receive their sentence for the $10 million punitive damages from the company's new owner, its new CEO. The heavy mahogany door swung open. The air in the room instantly crackled with tension. First to enter were several burly bodyguards, followed by Mr. Stanley and a team of sharp-looking lawyers from London. They respectfully cleared a path for one final person. A woman entered, her heels clicking decisively on the polished floor. She wore a sophisticated custom-tailored navy suit, her hair elegantly styled, her makeup flawless, radiating an aura of intelligence and fierce beauty. There was no trace of the useless woman who had once skirted around in a stained apron, always walking on eggshells around this family. The moment the family saw her face, a strangled gasp escaped them. Arthur, Eleanor, and Belle all stared, eyes wide, as if they had forgotten how to breathe. Their minds refused to process that the woman, standing before them, exuding such overwhelming power, was the era they had thrown out like trash. After a few seconds of stunned silence, Eleanor, in a desperate state of denial, spoke. Alara, what are you doing here? Did you come to laugh at us now that we're on the verge of bankruptcy? You've always been such a spiteful, nasty woman. And what gives you the right to act so high and mighty in a room like this? You're a useless housewife. Go make some tea or something. Eleanor's vile insults echoed in the silent room. Arthur tried to stop her, but her pride-fueled tirade was unstoppable. Valera, however, said nothing. She simply regarded Eleanor with the cold, silent gaze one might reserve for a pathetic insect. Under the weight of that crushing silence, Eleanor's voice faltered and died. Without a word, Era walked to the head of the table to the grand leather chair once occupied by the company's president and sat down. How rude, Mr. Stanley stated in English, standing beside her. It seems you have absolutely no idea who you are addressing. What are you talking about? She's our useless ex-daughter-in-law, Eleanor sputtered. One of the lawyers slammed a thick file on the table. You will show respect. The person before you is the top analyst of a major UK-based investment fund. And as of today, the newly appointed president and CEO of this corporation, Madame Alar Vance. Eleanor's jaw dropped. President Bell pointed a trembling finger, her face a mask of disbelief. And one more thing, the lawyer added, delivering the final brutal blow. Madame Ada is also the sole creditor for the $10 million punitive damages that Emmy Miller will spend the rest of his life repaying. In other words, the fate of your entire family is in her hands. $10 million creditor. The moment the meaning of those words sank in, Arthur's eyes rolled back and he collapsed to the floor in a dead faint. Grayson, trembling uncontrollably, looked up at the woman who was now looking down on him from the head of the table. The woman he had belittled and trampled upon. She was now an untouchable being, her finger hovering over the switch that would cast his entire family into hell. Ada, I'm sorry, I was wrong. I never knew you were so incredible. Please, 10 million is impossible. Forgive me. He collapsed to his knees, burying his face in his hands, begging for his life as tears streamed down his face. Breaking her silence, Alara finally spoke. Her voice was no longer the timid whisper of a woman afraid of her husband, but the resonant tone of a queen in command of her world. Now then, Grayson Eleanor Bell smiled slowly, dutifully. Let's have a long talk about settling the accounts for the money you stole from me to fund your lavish lifestyle and your repayment plan for the $10 million debt that will never disappear. The final curtain was about to fall on the Miller family. Please, I was wrong. I pay you alimony. Whatever you want. Just make this $10 million debt go away. We were married once, for God's sake. Grayson cried, his face a mess of tears and snot as he clung to the edge of the magnificent mahogany table. The arrogant man who had once dismissed her as useless and shoved divorce papers in her face was gone. Next to him, by the fainted Arthur, Eleanor suddenly adopted a sickeningly sweet tone. That's right, Ada, dear. I always thought of you as my own daughter. I was just led astray by that awful woman, Chloe. Please forgive your mother. I'm sorry, though, Ada. So, please don't garnish my wages. Don't take my designer things. Belle chimed in, forcing a pathetic, fawning smile. They'll save themselves, they would cast aside all pride and gravel. This was the true nature of the people who had considered themselves the chosen ones. I met their pathetic display with a calm, unblinking silence. Under my icy gaze, their pleading voices gradually faded. In the quiet room, I gave a slight nod to the lawyer standing beside me. Counselor, please explain the reality of their situation to them. Of course, madam. The lawyer opened his thick file and began to read their sentence in a businesslike yet merciless tone. First, Grayson Miller, your embezzlement has already been indicted as a criminal offense. After you leave this room, you will be immediately transferred into police custody. You will undoubtedly receive a prison sentence and will be incarcerated for several years. Prison? Grayson choked, a strangled gasp escaping his throat. And upon your release, since the damages are non-dischargeable in bankruptcy, the debt will continue to accrue interest for the rest of your life. All of your income, minus a legally mandated minimum for living expenses, will be garnished and paid to this company. You will, of course, be under our constant surveillance to prevent any attempt to flee. My whole life, I'll be a slave for the rest of my life. Grayson clutched his head, looking as if he might start writhing on the floor in despair. Next, the guarantors, Arthur and Eleanor Miller. Your house and all property have already been put up for sale. Your pensions will also be garnished up to the legal maximum every month. You will spend the rest of your days in a drafty, decades-old apartment, struggling to afford even a loaf of bread. No, I can't live in some hell. Eve only ever shopped at high-end grocery stores. Eleanor shrieked hysterically. But no one paid her any mind. Bill Miller, as a member of the household, you also have a duty to contribute. You have outstanding credit card debt from your lavish lifestyle, so you will be working day and night to pay it off. As the lawyer finished, they finally understood. They were completely finished. There was no escape. A hellish life of slaving away, drinking mud, and paying me back for the rest of their lives was now a certainty. You're a monster, a demon. Are you satisfied now that you've ruined our lives? Bill screamed, lunging at me, but she was effortlessly pinned to the floor like a piece of trash by the bodyguards. He slowly stood up and walked over to them, looking down with a gaze even colder and more condescending than any they had ever given me. Ruined your lives? My quiet yet authoritative voice filled the room. Don't be mistaken. I am not the one who ruined your lives. It was your own foolishness, drowning in vanity and pride, being duped by lies, stealing from your company, and betraying your family. Grayson flinched. I am simply settling the bill for the sins you committed on that cold, rainy day in London when you threw me away like garbage. Do you have any idea how much despair I felt? Compared to that, the hell that awaits you is still far too lenient. Grayson could say nothing in response, only continuing to weep his pathetic tears. By the way, I asked casually, would you like to know what happened to Chloe? Grayson looked up with vacant eyes. She was abandoned by her patron. Her fake pregnancy was exposed and her own family downed her. She is now saddled with her patron's massive debts, living on the fringes of society, constantly on the run from loan sharks. A fitting end for her, don't you think? Hearing this, Grayson finally let out a wail, his face contorted in agony as he sobbed uncontrollably. The full weight of what a treasure he had thrown away, what garbage he had picked up, and what he had lost finally crushed him. It is time, Mr. Stanley announced looking at his watch. The conference room doors opened and several uniformed police officers entered. Grayson Miller, there is a warrant for your arrest on charges of felony embezzlement. Jury coming with us to the station. No, please. I don't want to go. Ada, help me. Ada. The officers grabbed him by the arms and dragged him from the room. Eleanor and Belle followed, screaming and crying. Arthur, who had regained consciousness only to faint again upon understanding the situation, was unceremoniously carried out by the bodyguards. Era Grayson's fading. Screams eventually disappeared completely. The heavy mahogany doors closed, and silence once again descended upon the room. That was masterfully handled, Madame Era, Mr. Stanley said, bowing deeply with sincere respect. The chains of your past have now been completely broken. They will spend the rest of their lives atoning for their sins. Yes, it's been a long time coming, I sighed, looking out the window. The beautiful Chicago sunset was filtering through the skyscrapers. I felt the heavy, dark clouds that had suffocated my heart for 15 years finally begin to part. Just then, my personal smartphone chimed with a cheerful ringtone. The moment I saw the name on the screen, the face of the ruthless top analyst vanished, replaced by the gentle smile of a mother. Hello, Mommy. Where are you? I want to see you. The voice on the other end was the sweet, beloved voice of my daughter, Lily. It was the one treasure in the world that I had been waiting to hear from after ending it all. She was supposed to be with a sitter at Mr. Stanley's home in London. Considering the time difference, it was already late at night there, but she must have stayed awake just to wait for my call. I'm sorry, Lily. Mommy wants to see you, though. It's all over now. I'm coming home to London tonight. Really? Jay. I want to eat your yummy omelets. Her cheerful voice brought warm tears to my eyes. The food that Grayson and Eleanor had constantly criticized. The food made by the woman with no skills. My daughter said it was the best in the world. What greater happiness could I ask for? Yes, sweetie. When I get home, I'll make you all the omelets you want. After hanging up, I looked out the window at the sky. The thick clouds had completely vanished, replaced by a clear blue expanse. The dark cage that had imprisoned me for 15 years was finally completely broken. A few weeks later, the scene shifts back to London. Good morning, Madame Era. This morning's report was flawless. Mr. Vance was singing your praises. Thank you, Mr. Stanley. But there is always room for improvement. From the top floor of the office building, I was once again immersed in market data from around the globe. The strings of numbers on my screen were no longer cold and intimidating, but powerful allies helping me forge my future. During my lunch break, I sipped my tea and read an email from Mr. Vance. It contained a brief update on the Miller family. Grayson, convicted of embezzlement and accessory defraud, was serving his sentence in prison, subjected to hard labor. He reportedly spent his days weeping and muttering, "I'm an elite." This wasn't supposed to happen. To the annoyance of those around him. Even after his release in a few years, the $10 million debt would be waiting. Freedom and luxury would never be a part of his life again. Arthur and Eleanor, along with Belle, were living in a dilapidated apartment building over 50 years old. Eleanor, who had once been draped in luxury brands and treated me like a servant, was now working as a janitor, cleaning toilets at a supermarket. The woman, who had proudly declared herself one of the chosen, now spent her days tearfully scrubbing strangers' filth. Belle was working multiple part-time jobs around the clock, looking 10 years older than her age. Aunt Chloe, the catalyst for my liberation, had been abandoned by her patron, and after a brief stint working in the city's underbelly, had vanished, crushed by debt, and hounded by loan sharks. Her current whereabouts were unknown. Every one of them was now reaping what they had sown. Without a shred of emotion, I dragged the email to the trash icon. All my hatred and anger toward them was gone. They had simply ceased to exist for me, becoming nothing more than ghosts of the past. Mommy, as I left the office building that evening, Lily and her sitter ran toward me. How was school? Good. We learned so many new songs today, and I made lots of new friends. Lily threw her arms around me, her face glowing. The sad little girl who used to tiptoe around Grayson, constantly afraid and withdrawn, was gone. In the free and warm atmosphere of London, she had completely rediscovered her bright and innocent self. That's wonderful, Isweti. Come on, let's go home. He took her small hand and we walked along the beautiful cobblestone streets of London. The setting sun cast a golden glow on the tree-lined avenues. As we walked, I thought about my past self, a woman with no skills. Whose money do you think you're living on? Brainwashed by those cold words, I had believed I was worthless, capable only of enduring in silence. But it wasn't true. Everyone has their own unique value and strength. Sometimes it's just suppressed by an unjust environment. If you have the courage to take one step forward, you'll find that the world is beautiful and full of possibilities. If there is anyone out there right now crying in a dark house as I once did, I want to tell them your life is your own. Don't let anyone take it from you. Be brave and open that door. Mommy, what's wrong? Are you crying? Lily looked up at my face with a curious expression. No, Isweti, I'm not crying. He wiped away a tear and gave my daughter the biggest, most heartfelt smile of the day. He was just thinking that right now I'm the happiest person in the world. Really? Me, too. I'm the happiest person in the world, too. Lily laughed joyfully, pulling my hand to run ahead. Looking up at the London sky, I saw a large rainbow stretching across it after the rain. Our new life had just begun. No matter what happened from now on, I would never look down again. I squeezed my beloved daughter's hand tightly and walked proudly down the path that led to our bright, shining future.